there, I'm Ryan Aselta, and welcome to Tour Confidential. For golf, it's one of the best weeks on the calendar. Ryder Cup week is here, and here to break down the matches at Gleneagles in Scotland are Alan Bastable, Connell Barrett, and via Skype, Gary Van Sickle. And Gary, let's start with you. Since you have the gear on for the Ryder Cup, you're ready to go here. The pairings don't get announced until Thursday. Some guys are already lobbying for certain playing partners. When it comes to this U.S. squad, which pairing do you want to see the most?
Well, I've got it down to two I'd really like to see, either Tiger or Phil, or Billy Horschel and Chris Kirk. But I guess neither one of those is really going to happen. I'll be honest, outside of those four guys, there's not really one individual or pairing I would really get that excited about. You know, Rory and anybody is good. Sergio and anybody could be interesting. The Americans, I don't know. You know, do you want to see Jimmy Walker and Patrick Reed? It's not like Tiger and Phil or, you know, Jack and Arnie. I don't see there's anything out there that really blows my skirt up this year. So I don't have an answer. I don't have one.
I don't know if that's a good or bad thing when it comes to his skirt, but let's get to you guys on this. Alan, what do you think? Anyone you know, jumping out that you'd like to see play together?
I think there's an obvious choice, which has been bandied about a bit lately, and that's Phil Mickelson and Jordan Spieth, or Phil Mickelson and Ricky Fowler. Either one of those two pairings, I think, would be pretty dynamic. We saw what Mickelson and Fowler did at the PGA. They were high-fiving each other at the end of the PGA when they're competing against one another, and they elevated their game. So, you know, I think that would bode well for a Mickelson-Fowler pairing at Gleneagles next week.
I'd love to see Phil play with anybody because he makes anybody interesting. Because Phil is fascinating to watch. The pairing I'd most like to see is Bubba and one of the rookies. Maybe Patrick Reed, because Bubba is very emotional. You never know who's going to show up. The guy who wins the Masters, or the guy who gripes about water on the face of his driver. And we know from 2012 how emotional Bubba gets at the Ryder Cup when he was cheering the crowd as he hit a drive on Sunday Signals. So I'd like to see Bubba play with a young guy who needs him to become the mentor, which will maybe empower Bubba to be that team leader and be more of a grown-up and keep his emotions in check and use them rather than be overcome by them.
But he's so volatile that, you know, you never know what you're going to get from Bubba. So I would be a little fearful of putting him with a rookie, because if Bubba blows up, God knows what could happen, especially we know the crowds can get to him. So I would be a little nervous pairing him with a rookie. But along those lines, I would like to see Keegan Bradley and Patrick Reed, because Bradley, we know he's emotional. He can get the crowds going in the other direction. Patrick Reed, we haven't seen on this stage, but I think he could be, with all his bluster, I think he could get under guys' skin. We know Bradley is that type of player. Those two guys together, I think, could be very irritating to the European team. So
yeah, it seems like all the exciting pairings could come from the European side. You got Graham McDowell lobbying to play with Rory. Pretty much, like you guys said, Rory with anyone's going to be fun. So we'll keep an eye on that. Americans remember full well what happened 2 years ago, the miracle at Medina. Europe continued their dominance, recent dominance at least, here in the Ryder Cup. It seems like their squad's loaded, Gary, especially as you alluded to, the U.S. without two of the hottest golfers on the planet, in Chris Kirk and Billy Horschel. Does the U.S. have enough to capture this cup?
Well, I think any Ryder Cup comes down to, it's basically a putting contest. 18-hole matches, anybody can win those at this level. There isn't that much separation. But not only that, you know, really the Americans are missing 5 of their best guys. You're missing Tiger, Dustin Johnson, and Jason Duffner, and Billy Horschel and Chris Kirk. That's a lot to overcome. I mean, it can be done, but I think if you look at the top 5 European players and versus, I'm not even sure who the top 5 American players are, but you have a couple guys who won majors this year in Rory and Keimer against Americans. You got Bubba and, you know, a bunch of other guys who maybe won once or twice. The Europeans seem top heavy, which was how the Americans always were. And although that never worked for the Americans, I think you have to like the Europeans. I really do.
Alan, is this a matter of, you know, we saw it at Brookline, a team kind of, maybe this team comes together and gels and you get some kind of magical moment? Because on paper, it seems pretty lopsided.
Yeah, I think it's so hard to call. I mean, it's really a coin flip. Like Gary said, it's whoever's playing well that given week, whoever's making putts. It sounds like an obvious thing to say, but it's the truth. You know, I think one issue is going to be fatigue. I mean, this has been such a long year for these guys, especially the older guys like Mickelson, Jim Furyk. How are they going to hold up after, you know, 9 months of flying all over the globe, playing in these big events? Do they have any gas left in the tank? So I think that'll be a big thing to watch early in the week.
I think the odds, the Vegas odds of 2-1 are right on. U.S. hasn't won overseas in 21 years. I think there's a reason for that. The Euros, this is really their major collectively as a team. And I think the one silver lining to that dark cloud for Team USA and Watson is that in a way the pressure is off. No one really expects the Yankees to win, so maybe they keep it close. And then come Sunday singles are very volatile. Anything can happen. But I see the Euros winning in a squeaker, maybe 2-point win.
All right, should be a lot of fun watching. The Americans have won just one Ryder Cup since their magical comeback at Brookline back in 1999. We're going to see if that drought ends this weekend. Gary Van Sickle, Alan Bastable, and Connell Barrett, thank you guys very much. Appreciate it.